It's always lovely to attend a new motorcycle launch up in the mountains. It's a fascinating place to ride a bike. It's tough terrain. It tells you a lot about the bike. But at the same time, it also doesn't tell you many important things. Now, we attended the Apache RTX launch up in Shimla about a month and a half ago, and we gave you a very detailed report from out there. But there are still unanswered questions, mainly about how that new engine does on the highway, in the city, what kind of a touring bike is this. Well, we've been living with this bike for a few days now, and today we can finally give you all those answers. Now, this is not going to be a detailed review of the specifications of this motorcycle. We've already gone through all that, but to quickly recap, it's a brand new platform, new trellis frame, new 299cc engine, long travel suspension, 19-inch front wheel, 17-inch rear wheel, adventure bike aesthetics, lots of electronics, and a very tempting price. But let's go down to that engine. Now, this is TVS's own in-house motor. It replaces the 310cc engine that they co-developed with BMW all those years ago and has been powering bikes like the G310R, the TVS RR310, the RTR310. This is TVS's first usage of this engine, and this engine will surely go to more motorcycles over time. Now, in Shimla, we could not get the bike above 4th gear and 80 kph, but here it's a very different story. Let's start with what it's like in the city. It's actually quite pleasant because in Shimla, I know some people reported that the engine felt like you really needed to rev it out and there wasn't much of a bottom end. But I think the important thing to remember here is that A, we were at altitude. This is a small engine. It will suffer some effects because of that altitude. And B, there's some really steep inclines. You come around hairpin bends, loose terrain, you need to climb. It's first gear, you need to rev the engine out. That's just how it is with small engines. Out here, there is no issue with the bottom end. It's not a super meaty bottom end like you get with a slow revving engine, but it's also not a peaky top end like you have with the 310 right now. They have engineered this engine for a strong mid-range, and you do feel that. The gearing has also been selected very sensibly. It doesn't feel short geared, it doesn't feel very long geared. It just feels ideally matched to what that engine can do. And the moment you are above 3,000–4,000 RPM, there's a good drive. The motorcycle feels light on its feet. It filters through traffic very well, and it behaves well in traffic. As for heat, well, there is this patented ducting system that TVS has going on. It's an innovative idea. It's not the first to do something with this theory. What Bajaj has done in the past is there are ducts around the radiator fan that divert the hot air away from the rider's legs, and those work too. TVS has taken a step forward where they've got a closed off ducting right from the radiator fan all the way down and out from the bottom of the bash plate. We're having lovely weather in Mumbai right now. It never gets beyond 32–33 degrees, which is great for us. So I have not been able to test this in scorching hot weather, but so far, no issues in traffic whatsoever. For some reference, I ride an Xpulse 210 every day to work, and I can feel a clear amount of hot air draft coming on the left side, particularly on my left leg. Nothing with this motorcycle. It seems to run just fine, and I think that will be a good thing. Clutch weight, again, not so bad. It's not the lightest clutch out there, but it's not heavy at all. The gear shift is slick, and this bike has a quick shifter. When we were in Shimla, I did report that I felt like the fueling wasn't perfectly consistent. I rode two different motorcycles. The second bike was better than the first. This bike is actually really quite good. Better than the bikes I rode up there. Maybe TVS has had some time to fine-tune things, I'm not sure. But in most situations, the fueling is actually really very nice. On the gas, when you shut throttle, open throttle again, it's all very smooth, no jerkiness. There are two things that I have noticed. One is that, and this is something I noticed in city, when you close the throttle, there is a slight carry forward before the throttle seems to completely close. It's not terrible like it used to be on the Olas. That was scary, dangerous. This is almost not noticeable, but you do notice it in some situations. The second thing is that I noticed up in the mountains that the bike would sometimes bog. You know, you'd open the gas after changing a gear and there'd be a hesitation before the power comes in. I have had that happen to me 2–3 times on this bike as well. But the more I've examined it and investigated, I think it is down to the quick shifter. At first, I thought it was traction control cutting in, so I've turned off the traction control, been riding without it. It still happens very rarely, maybe 1–2 times a day. And I think it's something to do with my boot maybe touching the quick shifter, or how I have shifted, or maybe just how the gear shifter is being held coming back into place after a shift. Turning off the quick shifter stopped that occasional engine hesitation issue, so it does seem like it's something to do with the sensitivity of the system. And hopefully TVS will be able to fix this over time, because that quick shifter otherwise functions very nicely both on up and down shifts. Beyond that, this is a really very nice engine. To show you what it sounds like, it's typical TVS. It has a nice intake sound, it's a nice sounding exhaust, but it's also a little smoother than the 310 engine, particularly in the handlebar. Now, vibrations is something we really needed to investigate. Up in the mountains, you're in thickly padded gear, you're wearing thick off-road boots, not going very fast. Here, it's a different story. It's quite similar to what I noticed up there. The handlebar really stays free from vibrations at almost all points. Maybe high up in the rev range, you'll feel a very minor tingle. At high RPMs, I do notice that there's a high frequency sort of tingle again in the foot pegs. It's not a buzz, it's not irritating like it was on the 310. And you'll also feel some of that in the fuel tank. I think it's important to put it into perspective that this is just observations. It's not a problem, and I think it is more refined than the KTM 250 engine and more refined than the Himalayan between 100 and 120, because the Himalayan starts to get pretty strong vibrations in the bar, which this does not. It's what you would expect from a largish capacity single cylinder engine. It's there, but it's definitely not a problem, just an observation. In our performance runs, the RTX managed to just sneak under the 8-second mark in the 0 to 100 kph run, which places it neatly between the 250cc bikes and the bigger 400 to 450cc competition. In-gear acceleration also tells a similar story, and it finds a nice middle ground in the current Indian ADV space. As for fuel efficiency, it returns some pretty decent numbers when ridden at a gentle pace in the city and at a steady 75 to 80 km per hour on the highway in 6th gear. Of course, these numbers are just an indication of what the bike can offer, because our efficiency tests are conducted at a very sedate pace, and how efficient it will be for you will depend quite a bit on your riding style. Of course, TVS is pitching this motorcycle as a touring ADV. So what is this engine like on the highway? Again, pleasant surprise. It's very peaceful at about 100 km per hour, 6th gear, about 6,400, 6,500 RPM. No issues. The bike is calm, comfortable, and it has plenty of go if you want to accelerate or you just want to hold a higher cruising speed. 120 comes up at around just under 8,000 RPM. The red line on the display is 9,000 RPM, but the engine actually cuts the rev limiter above 10,000 RPM. Now, interestingly, TVS has limited the top speed to about 145 kph in 6th gear. It comes at around 9,000 RPM, and it seems to be an electronic limiter because the bike just won't go above that, no matter whether you tuck down or you have a long stretch of road. That is the top speed. So if you're someone who's into these YouTube drag races, well, then you will not be impressed with this engine. But if you want something that's just a good touring motor for triple-digit speeds, if that's what you're into, this engine is surprisingly competent. Like I said, 100 is peaceful. Beyond that is good. It will keep up with the 300-400cc bikes very easily. You'll never be left behind on this bike, and you'll be able to hold a quick cruising speed on the highway without highly intrusive vibrations and without the engine feeling unhappy. So I think in that sense, they have created a capable touring motorcycle, at least when it comes to the engine. What goes with that is the seating position. Now, this is one of my favorite aspects of this motorcycle. It is a large bike with lots of space. I am a little over 6 foot tall. I have room to move around. I don't feel locked in. The handlebar is nice and wide, but it's not too high, it's not too low. This is a really comfortable riding position to just be seated in for long durations. Wind protection is also really good. This windscreen is a nice size, and again, it's not too big. It doesn't stifle you, and it gives you some cooling air coming through the sides, but it keeps you shielded on the highway as well. There is some wind noise on your helmet, and this will vary depending on what helmet you wear, how tall you are, how you sit on the bike. But I noticed there is wind noise, but not a lot of buffeting, and I think again at highway speeds, this will be a nice windscreen. Adding to the touring credentials is that cruise control is standard on this motorcycle no matter what variant you buy. If you go for the mid or the top version, it has this auto adjusting headlamp. It's not a level adjusting thing, but it increases or decreases the brightness depending on how fast you're going. The headlight itself is excellent. I think it's one of the best headlamps on an Indian made motorcycle. The KTM 390 250 headlamp is very good. This one's also really good. This morning, riding out of Mumbai through the pollution, and you just flash the light at someone ahead of you and you can see the road signs light up. It's a good strong headlight and again adds to the touring capabilities of this motorcycle. Finally, I should mention that the seat itself is really comfortable. I've been sitting on this bike for hours. We were out testing on the highway yesterday for fuel efficiency, shooting today, no discomfort there whatsoever. What is going to be of some relevance is the seat height. Now this is 835 mm. That is on the tall side for the segment. It's a little higher than the Himalayan and the KTM 390 Adventure X. And to show you what that's like, we have who is now officially our expert seat height tester, Ashley, who has sat across all motorcycles that come on test today. Ashley is 5'7", 5'6", and this is what it's like. A little bit difficult to get on. How's it on the feet, Ashley? Yeah, he is on his toes on both ends. So it is a tall motorcycle if you are under 5'7". But the interesting thing is it's not a very top heavy motorcycle. So if you look at something like the Himalayan, that is a bit of an effort and it takes some skill and confidence to manage at very low speeds. This will be easier because despite the fact that it has this large looking fuel tank, it's only 12.5 liters. That being said, it is worth pointing out that Ashley mentioned to me off camera that he found this seat to be a little taller feeling than the KTM's, and that could be one of the reasons why TVS has decided to go for a more compact fuel tank. Some people will be unhappy with that because it does limit highway touring range to some extent, but I feel like even if you cruise at a pretty high speed, you'll easily get over 250 kilometers on a tank full, and by then generally someone wants to get up, stretch a little, maybe take a small break. So for me it's not a problem, but if you're into really long distance touring with very few breaks, you would want a bigger fuel tank. So that's the engine, but what about the chassis? And this shouldn't come as a surprise because TVS is a master of making a bike handle well and ride well, and the RTX does a fantastic job here too. For example, out on these winding roads that we've been shooting on today, the handling is really very good. It's typical of a sort of tall rounder motorcycle in that you just feel seated in this commanding riding position. You just drop the bike into a corner. There's a good amount of lean angle available. It's not scraping anything at quite a high level of lean, and the tires give you a decent amount of feedback as well. I haven't had any moments with the motorcycle and I've been riding with the traction control off, so it's actually been quite a confidence inspiring bike to ride. What I have not liked so much, and I think this is my biggest criticism with this motorcycle, are the brakes. Now these brakes in the mountains were effective because they didn't have much bite, they weren't super sharp, and they helped us while braking downhill on loose terrain. But out here, I just find that it A, takes too much effort, and B, there's not a very nice feeling at the lever either. It's quite wooden, and it's the one thing that takes away from the overall riding aspect of the motorcycle. They are effective, the braking distances are perfectly alright. The ABS works reasonably well unless you're in an absolute panic braking situation, in which case it can be a little intrusive. But again, something else that the bike does nicely is that you can pick your riding mode and it remembers it. So if you tell the bike, keep traction control off, it will remember that even after you cycle the key. And if you put it in rally mode, which disables the rear ABS, it remembers that the next time you're starting. So with rear ABS disabled, the front seems less intrusive on hard braking situations. Ironically, the rear brake actually feels really nice. There's a good amount of modulation in the lever. It doesn't lock very easily. You can control it well. And when it finally is time to lock, there's plenty of performance there as well. So I like the rear brake, I don't like the front brake. While the braking is a disappointment, the suspension is exactly the opposite. This is superb suspension. I think it's perhaps one of the best suspension setups in the country, rivaling the Himalayan. It does things in a different way to the Himalayan. The Himalayan has a softness to it. This feels a little more firm, but it takes on impacts, it takes on bad roads amazingly well. Now we have with us the top of the line BTO version of the RTX, which comes with adjustable suspension. So it's rebound and compression damping adjustment in the front, preload and rebound damping in the rear. I only made one small adjustment. I felt like the rebound was a little too soft on the rear, so it was doing that, which gives it this lovely plush ride quality. But when you want to push it in the corners, it feels a little loose. So just a few clicks on the shock. It's got a nice little knob adjuster like up front, and it settles things. This suspension is really very nice. Now, previous experience with the RTR 310 and the RR 310 says that even TVS's standard suspension without the adjustment on the lower versions is also very well set. Unfortunately, I have not ridden that bike, so I can't commit to it. But going by past experience, the non-adjustable suspension should also be really good. But yeah, suspension is one of the highlights of this motorcycle, and that has a big impact on the off-road ability of this bike, or the bad road ability. Any bad road, completely broken, no matter what, you just sit and ride through, and the bike soaks it all in, keeps you in complete comfort. That is one of the very strong points of this motorcycle compared to most of its rivals. As for off-road, again, it doesn't look like a particularly hardcore off-road thing. Big tires, just a 19-inch wheel, sort of road bodywork, but it's surprisingly good, and that again is the suspension working. What doesn't go in this bike's favor when it's time for off-road riding are the ergonomics. Now again, like I said, seating is absolutely fine, and I've said this in the mountains as well, but standing up doesn't feel very good. It's not a problem with the handlebar, that's alright to have a little bit of a bend down, but it's how you interlock with the motorcycle. Now I would want all of this to be able to grip on the bike, but the footrest holders push your feet out slightly. So what happens is that there is air in here, and it's not a natural hold onto the motorcycle. You just are gripping on with your ankles, which to me feels a little tiresome. It doesn't give you a good interaction with the motorcycle to hold onto it off-road, and that sort of takes away from it. But yeah, I mean, this will take you anywhere. It'll take you anywhere at a pretty good pace. Not the most hardcore off-roader for sure. The 390 Adventure with the 21-inch wheel, the Himalayan, if you know what you're doing, X-Pulse, KLX, they are more capable off-roaders than this. But this is not a poser, and it can do quite a bit of off-road riding. That I learned up in the mountains. We haven't done much of it today, but it just takes you wherever you point it, and it's quite good fun doing that. So yeah, the standing ergos could be better, but it's not such a relevant thing on a motorcycle that most people are just going to use for daily commuting or touring, and in that respect, the RTX does a lot of things very well. Features. You get so much well thought out stuff with this bike. The 5-inch TFT display, that's standard, very nicely put, and you can even customize the widgets down there, choose what information you want to see. Very easy to use with the switchgear. That's a nice thing. There's also the cruise control and the headlamp that we talked about. It is also a very nicely put together motorcycle when you look at it. Very few quality issues that I would have with this motorcycle. In fact, this USB charger out here has slightly rough looking plastics on the door. We've pointed out the single panel gap that stands out on this motorcycle when we last rode it. Switchgear is good, adjustable levers are standard. It is really well equipped. There are a few accessories, including this beak, the hand guards, the crash guard, and I think this is not standard on the base variant, this large rack that can hold a top box. The accessory prices are quite reasonable. We'll put up a little box about how much they cost, so even if you go for the base version and you want to put some of these things on your bike, it's not going to be a big pinch. And that is about it with what my riding experience has been. The downsides of this motorcycle, as I see them, are really two things for most people. The seat height will be its biggest challenge for shorter riders, but I think as we evolve as a market when it comes to ADVs, people are going to realize that ADVs are tall motorcycles. It's what they need to be. If you want more ground clearance, which is about 200 mm on this bike, if you want more suspension travel, 180 mm, the motorcycle gets tall. It's just the way it is. You get those benefits by having a tall seat, and it's going to be a while, but people will eventually learn to ride around these issues. Fuel tank. Given how large it looks from the outside, I think that this could have had a larger fuel tank. TVS has probably taken the measure of putting a smaller tank in there to keep the weight down. This is 180 kilos, which means it's a little lighter than the KTM 390 and a significant amount lighter than the Himalayan. Again, it's a sensitive thing in a market like ours, especially with tall seat height. So some people will be unhappy, but it's a manageable thing. What I personally don't like about it is really very little. I think these stickers look a little budget, but that's maybe one area where TVS has saved some money. Another thing that sort of bugs me is that if you look at the stamping on the inside of the handguard, on the left side, all the stamping, including the TVS badge, is the right side up. On the right side, it's upside down. Maybe that's a cost-saving measure so they can use the same unit. I'm not sure, but small thing that if you're a bit of an OCD person, that will irritate you. I mean, beyond that, wow, really very little to criticize with this motorcycle. Brings us to the conclusion. I think it's a good point to talk about that name, RTX. TVS tells us that that stands for Rally Tourer Extreme. Now, if you ask me, two of those things are purely marketing fantasy rather than motorcycling reality. This is not a rally motorcycle, and the only extreme thing about it is its price, which for us is a wonderful thing. Starting 2 lakh rupees ex-showroom. You spend about 15,000 rupees more and you get valuable things like the quick shifter, you get the auto dimming headlamp, you get Bluetooth connectivity with a screen mirroring function. So if you use the TVS app, you'll have screen mirroring on the display. We got to experience that up in Shimla. It can be a helpful feature for when you need it. If you spend another 20-odd thousand rupees, you go up to 2.34 lakh rupees, which gives you the BTO version, which gets you the adjustable suspension, brass coated chain and tire pressure monitoring, which again on a touring motorcycle is a helpful feature. So yeah, the value is phenomenal, and it got me thinking that in the last few years we've had 3 amazing value for money motorcycles. The Tram Speed 400, the Pulsar NS 400 and now this. And to me, this motorcycle has created the biggest wow factor of the 3, because the NS 400 is still undisputed the best bang for buck motorcycle you can get today. 43 horsepower for that price, awesome. But it looks and feels old. The Speed 400 has heritage, very nice attention to detail, good performance, but it's a rather small motorcycle and it doesn't have the kind of features that this does. One of the big things going for the RTX is its looks. It looks and feels more expensive, bigger than the KTM and the Himalayan. And when we parked it in the office, all the car guys who generally come out to look at the cool bikes were amazed that this is just a 300cc bike and it costs just 2 lakh rupees. I think that is what the RTX really has going for it. It gives you so much for your money, and that's why it is such an impressive motorcycle.